On a chilly evening, a girl named Suzune is pulled into a shed by her father, who can no longer bear the sight of her. He resents her existence, wishing she had never been born, and decides to abandon her there for the entire night. But shortly after, her brother Jinta arrives, attempting to rescue her. To his shock, she's nowhere to be found. Desperate, he dashes through the village searching for Suzune, finally spotting her as she steps onto a bridge, preparing to leave the village behind. He runs up to her and says sorry for not being able to protect her from their father's abuse, explaining that he'll only get in trouble if he tries to defend her. Suzune was born with a demon eye, which means she's under a curse. She knows there's no way she could ever live a normal life with an eye like that, so she tells her brother to leave her and just go back home. Jinta pauses for a moment, thinking about what to do next, and eventually makes up his mind. He loves his sister more than the rest of the family. He reaches for her hand and asks her to run away with him. The two of them leave their old home behind, but since it's still raining, the cold starts to set in. With nowhere to take shelter, Jinta brings Suzune to the ruins of an old building, and the two curl up together to stay warm. Suzune has already drifted off to sleep, and Jinta is on the verge of losing consciousness as well. But just before he does, he spots a man walking toward them, who mentions something about taking them in. When Jinta finally wakes up, he realizes the man is carrying him while Suzune walks beside them. The man is relieved to see Jinta awake and gently sets him down before they all continue their journey toward the man's village. The village is primarily home to blacksmiths who specialize in crafting katanas, meaning everyone is busy at work at the moment. The man guides Jinta and Suzune to his house, and the moment he opens the door, his daughter rushes out to welcome him. Though delighted to see her father, she's also intrigued by the two children standing behind him. Her father then explains that from now on, Jinta and Suzune will be staying with them. He asks his daughter if she's okay with that, and she actually seems thrilled by the idea, since that means she'll have friends to play with. She walks up to Jinta to introduce herself as Shiryuki, and she hopes all three of them can get along with each other from now on. That night, Jinta finds it hard to fall asleep, so Madoharu asks him if something's bothering him while cleaning his katana. Madoharu listens as Jinta asks if he's a samurai, but Madoharu explains that he's actually a sentinel, and it's his duty to protect important people and places. The next morning, Jinta and Suzune meet up with Shiryuki and Chidose by the river. While heading back home, Jinta brings up Shiryuki's mother, Yokazi, who helped him and Suzune remain in the village. Shiryuki explains that his mother is an Itsukaheim, a maiden of the fire god, and that only the village chief and her husband, Madoharu, who serves as her sentinel, are able to see her. The next day, Jinta trains with Madoharu, but as a novice in sword fighting, he's easily knocked to the ground. He tells Jinta that he still has a long way to go, but if he keeps practicing, then he will surely become a master someday. Years pass, and Jinta has become the new sentinel of the Shrine Princess. He's now attending a meeting with all the village officials and the princess herself, who remains hidden behind a curtain, unseen by anyone. As the meeting begins, she praises Jinta for his exceptional demon-slaying skills. He humbly replies that he's just doing his duty protecting the village. The last demon he faced even tried disguising itself in human form to slip past the village's defenses. One of the officials begins to look uneasy after Jinta says this, and the others ask if he has any idea why a demon would try to sneak into the village. An elderly man suggests the demon might be targeting the princess, since according to legend, if a demon consumes a princess's liver, it will gain immortality. However, it could also be after the sacred Yeria sword, which has been passed down through generations and holds great importance, making it a logical target for demons. The old man goes on to say that the Yeria sword was forged by one of the most skilled blacksmiths ever known, and it's believed to possess mystical powers within it. If the demons are really targeting the Yeria blade, the entire village could be in danger. The chief warns everyone to stay alert, but Kiyomasa dismisses the concern. After all, he and Jinta are tasked with protecting the princess, though he makes it clear he doesn't believe Jinta is fit for the duty. Just as the two are about to clash, the princess silences them. With the meeting over, everyone exits the shrine except Jinta, who stays behind to stand guard over her. With just the two of them left, the princess steps out of her chamber, revealing herself to be Shiryuki. Jinta scolds her for being so careless, reminding her that a princess shouldn't let herself be seen so freely. But the two have been close friends for years, so she brushes off his concerns. She then mentions that Suzune is also present, though the shrine is strictly forbidden to outsiders. Strangely, Suzyun hasn't aged a bit in all this time. When Jinta and Shiryuki rouse her from sleep, she beams with joy at the sight of her big brother again. Jinta has been so busy with demon slaying that she barely ever gets to see him, but while he's happy to see her too, he scolds Suzyun for coming here since the shrine is off limits. She doesn't understand why she can't visit Shiryuki, but Jinta gets to see her whenever he wants. But rules are rules, so Jinta tells her to go back to their house. After Suzyun departs, the chief soon makes his way back to the shrine, carrying something important he needs to talk about with Shiryuki. He then asks Jinta to give them some privacy. At first, Jinta refuses, as he considers it his responsibility as Shiryuki's sentinel to stay by her side at all times. However, Shiryuki tells him he can take the rest of the day off, and with that, Jinta eventually heads home. Meanwhile, just outside the village, two demons have taken an interest in Suzyun because of her demon eye. The following day, Shiryuki quietly slips out of the shrine and reunites with Jinta and Suzyun. The three of them decide to share breakfast together, as it's been a long time since they've eaten like a family. Afterward, Jinta and Shiryuki go on a date. She has something important to tell him. Earlier, the chief spoke with her and said she should start thinking about producing a successor, in case she's killed by the demons. It's a grim thought, but he's not wrong, so now, Shiryuki needs to marry soon, and it's been decided she'll marry Kiyomasa mainly because he's the chief's son and the future leader of the village. Jinta doesn't know how to feel about the news, and Shiryuki isn't happy either. She confesses that she's in love with Jinta, and had come hoping to ask him to run away with her and start a new life. But deep down, she knows he'd never say yes. Jinta swore to protect the village and trained for years to do so, and Shiryuki made the same promise when she became the Shrine Maiden. Running away now would betray everything they've fought for. As more time goes by, Jinta is summoned to another meeting, where he learns of two demons spotted deep in the forest. Given the mission to eliminate it, he gets ready to depart without delay, but just as he's about to leave, Kiyomasa intercepts him. Knowing Jinta must have already heard the news that Shiryuki is set to marry him, Kiyomasa can't comprehend why Jinta is behaving as though the revelation doesn't bother him at all. Jinta tells him there's no reason to be upset. What matters most to him is the safety of the princess and the village. The crazy part is, Kiyomasa isn't even trying to brag about marrying Shiryuki. He knows Jinta loves her, and that she loves Jinta too, so it just feels wrong for him to be the one marrying her. But Jinta has already made up his mind, so he sets out from the village to complete his mission. As Jinta steps into the forest, a demon ambushes him without warning. Before engaging in battle, he asks the demon if it's alone because the report said there were two demons out here, and the demon reveals its partner had unfinished business to take care of in the village. A bad feeling twists in Jinta's gut. First, he'll have to cut this one down, then rush back to stop whatever the other is planning. With a heavy swing, he dashes forward and manages to sever one of the demon's arms, but the demon continues its relentless assault, forcing him to retreat. The demon grabs its own severed hand, not even angered by the loss. Instead, it's merely impressed that Jinta possessed the skill to cut it off. Meanwhile, in the village, Suzyun is terrified when a demon woman confronts her. The demon insists that Suzyun is just like her, but Suzyun refuses to accept it. The woman quickly figures out that Suzyun's love for Jinta is suppressing her from becoming a full demon, something she finds frustrating, as it must have taken endless love and care from Jinta to make Suzyun so kind. Suzyun loves Jinta with all her heart, so hearing the demon speak highly of Jinta brings her a sense of comfort. Now that Suzyun no longer fears her, the demon begins trying to persuade her to use her powers to assist her. She even assures Suzyun that she won't harm her in any way, and since everyone knows demons are incapable of lying, she tells Suzyun that she can trust her. However, the girl rejects her offer because there's a chance that the demons might hurt his brother. The demon girl can't deny that, so she tries using a different method to convince Suzyun and shows her a vision. The vision shows Shiryuki undressing and getting ready to kiss Kiyomasa, and seeing this makes Suzyun throw up. so she questions the demon, asking if what she witnessed was real. The demon then explains that her ability lets her see into the future. She can also share those future visions with others, which is exactly what Suzune just experienced. But if Suzune still has doubts, the demon says she's more than willing to take her to the shrine right now so she can see it for herself. Meanwhile, Jinta is still fighting the other demon, but before the fight continues, he wants to know why the demons attack humans in the first place. The demon explains that it is simply its purpose in life. Demons don't necessarily have to kill humans, but every demon has an intended purpose they must fulfill, and right now the demon's purpose is to stop him. The demon's power lets him absorb other demons' abilities by eating them, even reshaping his body freely. Knowing hesitation means death. Jinta lunges to finish him, but in an instant, his arm is torn off. When he tries slashing the demon's throat, the monster just crushes the blade with his teeth. By all accounts, Jinta should be a dead man, but at the last second he reaches back and grabs a piece of his shattered sword. He then plunges the fragment deep into the demon's heart before the demon could retaliate, so Jinta emerges victorious. The demon accepts his defeat and he's happy about it. This was his purpose all along. He reveals that his companion has the foresight ability and used it to look 170 years into the future. Her vision showed the strongest demon of all time living right here. That's why they came in the first place. As soon as the demon mentions a demon living in the village, Jinta realizes he must be talking about Suzune. But before he can react, the demon says he's going to give Jinta a gift to congratulate him on his victory. A second later, the demon's severed arm grabs Jinta's head and begins squeezing him until he passes out. Meanwhile, back at the shrine, Kiyomasa is on top of Shiryuki, but she asks him to stop, saying she's not ready to have a child, or at the very least, she wants to wait until they know Jinta is safe. However, Kiyomasa insists that now is the perfect time, pointing out that Jinta is currently away on a mission, otherwise, Jinta would be stuck sitting outside, forced to listen to her moaning. Before anything else happens, the demon girl bursts through the curtains, forcing Suzune to see the horrifying scene, and she's completely devastated. Meanwhile, Jinta wakes up in the forest, his arm somehow restored, the demon gone. But he can't dwell on it. Suzune might be in danger, so he sprints back to the village without another thought. Meanwhile, Suzune struggles to process what she just saw. Watching Jinta love Shiryuki was painful, but she endured it, even halting her own growth to avoid interfering. All for his happiness. She even stopped herself from growing up so she wouldn't get in the way of Jinta and Shiryuki's relationship. Shiryuki is marrying someone else. That's the breaking point. So Suzune loses control and completely snaps. She's overwhelmed with frustration that Shiryuki would betray Jinta's love, and after a few provocative words from the demon girl, Suzune makes the decision to kill. Her demon powers awaken all at once, and the entire room becomes shrouded in black aura as Suzune transforms into her teenage form. Kiyomasa grabs the legendary sword and attempts to strike Suzune, but before he can make a move, the demon knocks him out cold. She then drags Kiyomasa's body outside, saying she has something she wants to take care of, leaving Shiryuki alone with Suzune. Not long after, Jinta arrives at the shrine to find Shiryuki still alive, and she runs straight into his arms, but just a second later, Suzune slices off her head. Jinta stands frozen in disbelief at what just happened, and moments later, Suzune appears behind him, holding Shiryuki's severed head. Jinta demands to know why Suzune would do something so horrible, prompting Suzune to begin explaining everything about Shiryuki marrying another man, but Jinta already knew. And even if he hadn't, that still didn't give her the right to kill Shiryuki. In that moment, Jinta realizes the Suzune he once cared for no longer exists, and with Shiryuki gone, all he has left inside him is hatred. The demon arm begins merging with the rest of his body, transforming him, and now he stares at Suzune with nothing but pure contempt. Suzune doesn't understand why he's looking at her with such hatred when all she wanted was to make him happy. She interprets his expression as a sign that he's about to abandon her like everyone else, so she makes the decision to kill him. demon. However, when she stabs Jinta in the stomach, she quickly realizes that it barely caused any damage, and in response, Jinta punches a hole straight through her body. Suzyun survives the brutal hit, so Jinta moves in to finish her off. But at the very last moment, the demon girl leaps in and sacrifices herself to protect Suzyun. The demon girl urges Suzyun to flee while she still can, so Suzyun begins to walk away. But just before going, she tells Jinta that there's nothing left for her in this world, so no matter how many years it takes, she's going to make sure everything is destroyed, and on that final day, she'll return to kill him for his betrayal. In the key year by the 1850s, Jinta, now called Jinya, had established a strong reputation as an exceptional demon hunter. One day, he receives a summons from a wealthy man for a unique mission. The man presents Zenji, his assistant, to Jinya and informs him that any additional details about the task can be obtained from Zenji. After that, he rises and exits the room. Zenji greets Jinya and inquires how much he already knows. The man had already explained to Jinya about his beloved daughter, Natsu, and his desire for Jinya to protect her from a demon that recently appeared. However, there's a bit more to it than just that. Essentially, Jinya will be acting as Natsu's bodyguard because ever since she turned 13, she claims to have been hearing a demon outside her room. The demon keeps repeating things like, "Return my daughter to me." Because of this, Natsu lives in fear that the demon might abduct her. Speaking of Natsu, she suddenly bursts into the room, searching for Zenji. Upon noticing Jinya seated there, she immediately assumes he must be the bodyguard her father mentioned he would be hiring. However, when Jinya attempts to introduce himself, she abruptly cuts him off. Wanting nothing to do with him, she orders him to leave at once, convinced that he's just some kind of fraud pretending to be a demon slayer. Zenji tries to assure her that Jinya is the real deal, explaining that her father went through considerable effort to track him down. Still, Natsu refuses to hear it and insists that Zenji throw Jinya out. Later that evening, Natsu is sitting up in bed, still frightened by the thought that the demon might come back. Zenji arrives and takes a seat outside her door to help ease her anxiety. Having Jinya around would likely have been the better option, but since Natsu drove him away, Zenji figures he'll have to take on the role of her bodyguard instead. He's unsure how much help he'd be in an actual fight with a demon, but if it brings her some comfort, he promises to keep watch until morning so she can rest. Natsu is relieved that Zenji has come to protect her, though he remains skeptical that a demon will actually appear. She's disheartened to hear that Zenji doesn't entirely believe her, just like her father, who still hired a samurai to kill a demon. Zenji can't say for certain whether Natsu's father truly believes demons exist, but he can assure her that her father is treating this matter with the utmost seriousness. He deeply cares about Natsu's safety, even though she isn't his biological daughter. At that very moment, Natsu hears the demon's voice once more and starts trembling. She pleads with Zenji to save her, but he's frozen in fear just like she is. When he finally sees the demon, he orders Natsu to stay locked inside her room while he deals with it, though he has no clue how he'll possibly fight such a creature. Just as the demon is about to grab Zenji, Jinya appears out of nowhere and slices its arm. At first, Jinya asks the demon to reveal its identity, but when it stays silent, he opts to simply slice it in half. With a single swing of his sword, the demon collapses to the ground and dissolves into a cloud of black smoke. For the time being, Zenji and Natsu are safe. Natsu realizes that Jinya is the same samurai she had thrown out earlier that day, so he turns to her and asks if she still believes he's just a scam artist. Natsu asks if the demon is dead, but taking one down isn't quite that simple. From Jinya's experience, demons are only truly dead when they vanish into white mist, so since this one turned into black mist, it's a clear sign that it will return. The following morning, Zenji expresses his gratitude to Jinya for rescuing them the night before. Knowing the demon will return, he requests that Jinya stay with them for one more night. Jinya agrees, saying he'd be glad to help. But first, he has some questions about Natsu. Ever since he heard the demon demand, "Return my daughter to me," something has felt off to him. Now, he wants to know if there's more to the story. Zenji clarifies that Natsu's birth parents were distant relatives of the boss, but they died some time ago, prompting the boss to take her in and raise her as his daughter. And just in case Jinya is concerned, Zenji insists there's absolutely no chance Natsu could be a demon child. If she were, the boss would never have adopted adopted her in the first place. He then reveals something darker. The boss's own wife was killed by demons, and afterward, his son vanished without a trace. To this day, the boss holds demons responsible for destroying his family, and his hatred for them runs bone deep. Later that evening, while Natsu is having dinner with her father, he asks if everything has been going smoothly with her new bodyguard. At first, she had her doubts about Jinya, but after witnessing his skills firsthand, she's convinced he's the real thing. Still, Natsu can't help but wonder why her father chose Jinya in particular for the job. He explains to her that lately, whispers have spread through Edo, not just about demons lurking in the shadows, but also about a mysterious swordsman capable of cutting down any demon in a single strike, provided the price is right. Natsu's father looked into these rumors himself, confirming their truth. That's how he knew there could be no better protector for Natsu than this very man. Natsu is relieved to discover that her father truly took her seriously when she spoke to him about the demon, since his love is the only thing that matters to her. Ever since he adopted her, Natsu has felt immense joy, yet she has also endured relentless torment from the cruel rumors people keep spreading about her. Later that night, as planned, Zenji and Jinya wait outside Natsu's room when suddenly she steps out and asks Jinya to tell her his name. She hadn't allowed him to introduce himself earlier, since Natsu's father clearly respects him. She's made up her mind to trust Jinya as well. Jinya notices how deeply Natsu cares for her adoptive father, Juso, but that's only natural. After all, he welcomed her into his home and gave her a place to belong, so she feels immense gratitude toward him. While they're discussing the matter, Jinya brings up a rumor he heard about Juso's missing son and asks Natsu about it. However, the moment he mentions it, Natsu shouts that she has no knowledge of it. It's obvious that this is a delicate subject for her, so Jinya chooses to drop the topic for the time being to avoid upsetting her. Natsu then questions Jinya if it's actually possible for a human and a demon to have a child together, to which Jinya responds affirmatively. This leads Natsu to wonder if she could be the daughter of the demon who keeps attacking, but Jinya reassures her that she has no connection to that demon whatsoever. Natsu questions Jinya, asking how he can be so certain, so Jinya goes on to explain that he has some history with this particular demon, which is why he knows it couldn't possibly be Natsu's mother. There are several different ways a demon can come into existence in this world. It might be born from two demon parents, from a union between a demon and a human, or in more uncommon cases, a demon can appear out of nowhere. These types of demons are born from the essence of powerful emotions, especially the negative kind, and when those dark feelings build up inside people, they can sometimes manifest in the form of a demon like the one they're dealing with. Natsu starts freaking out after seeing the demon again, so Jinya casually walks up to it and starts asking it to state its name. The demon doesn't seem intelligent enough to understand what Jinya is saying. As it lunges at him, Jinya smacks it across the face and pins it to the ground. Zenji urges Jinya to hurry up and kill the demon already, but Jinya replies that if he does, it will just keep coming back. Natsu demands to know why, prompting Jinya to explain that this demon was born from her own emotions. It manifested because of Natsu's deep-seated belief that stirring up trouble would force her father to pay attention to her. At first, Natsu rejects the idea outright, but as Jinya speaks, she realizes his words ring true. She had desperately wanted something, anything to make her father see her as his real daughter, and then, out of nowhere, a monster appeared to fulfill that wish. Jinya tells her that the only way this demon will ever go away is if she regains control over her feelings, but Natsu doesn't know how she's supposed to do that. Jinya tells her that all she needs to do is come to terms with the way she feels and earnestly ask him to slay the demon. Natsu pauses, reflecting, and it dawns on her. All she truly desired was for Juso to love her as his own daughter, but deep down, she doubted he ever would. That's why she convinced herself that if a demon targeted her, he might finally show her the affection she craved. And now, those twisted feelings have taken physical form right before her eyes. In a way, that monster is her. But Zenji quickly stops her, insisting she shouldn't see it that way. Sure, the demon may have come from her emotions, but that's not what's important at this moment. Zenji knows the truth. Juso loves Natsu more than anything, and she feels just as deeply for him, even if neither of them is great at showing it. Moving forward, she'll have to face her feelings more openly, but Zenji promises he won't let her do it alone. He'll stand with her every step of the way. This gives Natsu the confidence to finally let go of the doubt and self-loathing that's spawn the demon. So she tells Jinya to kill it once and for all, and as soon as Jinya hears those words, he pulls out his sword and slashes the demon in half. This time, the demon's body fades into a white mist, so Jinya is certain that it isn't going to come back anymore. But later that night, after Natsu has returned to bed, the demon's form starts to reappear. Jinya isn't entirely surprised. If the creature had been purely born from Natsu's own suppressed emotions, the fact that it's returning means another person's feelings must have contributed to its existence, and as far as Jinya's aware, there's only one other individual in these lands who ever had the capacity to become a demon: Juzo's wife. With Natsu's negative emotions gone, the demon is struggling to keep its shape, but the daughter it keeps calling out isn't Natsu, it's Suzyun. That means Jinya is Juzo's missing son, and this demon is his and Suzyun's mother. Truthfully, Jinya doesn't have any vivid memories of what his mother was like when she was alive, but it still saddens him that things turned out like this. All he can do now is bring her suffering to an end so that she can finally find peace and move on. The following morning, as Jinya prepares to depart, Zenji and Natsu come outside to thank him once more for everything he's done. But Jinya tells them there's no need for thanks. He's already received his reward. Besides, he sees this as his way of making things right. Natsu doesn't quite understand what he means, so Jinya goes on to explain that growing older has given him the chance to reflect on his past choices. Back when he ran away with Suzyun, he thought he was doing the right thing, but he never really stopped to think about how his actions might have impacted his father. Natsu remains confused by his words, so Jinya simply advises her to cherish the affection her father gives her. With that, he turns and walks away. Shortly after, Juzo emerges. When Zenji questions why Juzo didn't come out earlier to thank Jinya too, he shrugs it off. He'd been confident from the start that Jinya would succeed, so he saw no need for formal gratitude. Zenji questions why would Juzo place such absolute trust in some wandering demon slayer, but Juzo simply replies that it's only natural for a parent to believe in their own child. The others still haven't realized Jinya is actually Juzo's son, and Juzo has no plans to spell it out for them. With a dismissive wave, he tells Zenji to quit dawdling and return to his duties. Juzo turns to leave, but Natsu stops him. She has something on her mind. Tentatively, she asks if there's any way she can assist him with his work. Surprised, Juzo questions her sudden offer. She explains that Jinya advised her to show gratitude for Juzo's kindness, and this touches him, proof that Jinya still views him favorably. But with a warm smile, Juzo tells her she owes him nothing. After all, the greatest joy a parent can know is simply seeing their child grow up safe and happy. After traveling for some time, Jinya continues his journey and eventually arrives at a new village, where he stops at a soba shop to have lunch. The owner prepares his meal and hands it to his daughter, Afu, so she can bring it over to Jinya's table. Afu is still getting used to the job, so she's been practicing to make sure she doesn't spill anything. Her father is proud that this time she managed to avoid making a mess. Speaking of messes, he brings up the fact that there have been a series of murders happening lately. Rumor has it that a serial killer is lurking in town, but the emperor refuses to take any action about it. Jinya cautions him to watch his words, since speaking against the emperor could get someone killed, but Jinya isn't the type to report people. And besides, he's grown quite fond of this place. He'd hate to see anything bad happen to it. As the conversation continues, the man asks Jinya why he keeps returning to their shop. Afu scolds her father, telling him not to pester Jinya while he's eating, or he might not come back. But honestly, this is Jinya's 5th straight day stopping by for a meal. He's basically a regular at this point. After finishing his meal, Jinya pays the shop owner for the food, but before he walks out, the man can't help but ask why Jinya always carries so much money. He's not making any accusations. It's just that most Ronins don't have that kind of cash on hand. He's curious where Jinya gets his funds from. Jinya reveals that he's a demon hunter, but the shop owner is skeptical about the existence of demons. However, he's recently heard some disturbing rumors. Locals suspect the serial killer could be a demon, as every victim discovered had their body horrifically mutilated, and several others have vanished completely without a trace. That certainly seems like a demon's work, so Jinya inquires about the last known location of the slasher to investigate. All this discussion of serial killers and demons is making Afu anxious, so before Jinya departs, she tells him to be alert out there. That night, Jinya makes his way to the bridge, the last known location of the slasher, hoping to put an an end to the killings. He waits for hours, but nothing happens, just as he's ready to call it a night and turn back. A desperate scream pierces the air, a woman crying for help. He dashes toward the sound, but when he arrives, all he finds are mutilated corpses strewn across the ground. Strangely, every body is male, which means the slasher must have taken the woman alive. While Jinya is still trying to make sense of what's happening, he suddenly senses something approaching, prompting him to instinctively dodge and narrowly avoid a sword slash. His attacker appears to be invisible, making it impossible for Jinya to keep track of him, and he ends up getting slashed across the back. Jinya is convinced that the attacker must be a demon, and since no one is around to witness it, he no longer needs to hide his demon arm. The invisible demon lunges forward, attempting to slash Jinya once more, but Jinya's body has become too hard now, causing the sword to shatter on impact. No longer holding back, he prepares to finish off the slasher demon for good. However, before he can act, the demon raises his arms and surrender. Introducing himself as Mosuk, he explains that the sole reason he attacked Jinya was because he, too, had been hunting the slasher. He'd heard rumors of the slasher being a demon and sensed a demonic presence nearby, so he naturally thought it was the slasher. Upon arriving, Jinya was the only one he saw. If his story true, Jinya questions why a demon would pursue a serial killer. It's a lengthy tale, so Mosuk proposes they move elsewhere to discuss it before anyone notices them. Mosuk takes Jinya to his house, and once they've settled in, he explains that as demons age, some decide to integrate with humans, living peacefully within society. Demons cannot lie, but as long as no one directly questions whether he's a demon, he can maintain his secret. Having lived for more than a century, Mosuk is a superior demon, which is how he gained the power to turn invisible. Most people assume superior demons are powerful, but Mosuk remains weaker and slower than an average demon. Though Jinya knows Mosuk isn't the slasher, he wonders why he's so determined to stop the real one. Mosuk then reveals the reason: he has a personal resentment. The slasher immediately kills male victims, but female victims are always abducted, a fact Mosuk knows well because his wife was among them. Her name was Hatsu, and despite knowing he was a demon, she always showed him kindness. About a month ago, she disappeared without a trace. 10 days later, her body was discovered near the Kanda River, and according to the report, she appeared to have been brutally tortured before her death. Mosuk can't allow such injustice to stand. Hatsu didn't deserve to die in such a terrible way. Though he doesn't usually care much for humans, his wife was the one exception. He loved her more than anything. Now, all he feels toward her killer is pure hatred. Determined to settle this himself, he asks Jinya to step aside and let him handle the slasher alone. But Jinya can't bring himself to agree to that. Hunting demons is his life's purpose, so he can't overlook this one. Mosuk understands where he's coming from, so he suggests teaming up with Jinya to track down the slasher together. But he asks that Jinya allow him to be the one to deliver the final blow when the time comes. Jinya doesn't object to the arrangement, but he questions whether revenge is truly what Mosuk seeks. Once they locate the slasher, Mosuk will have to carry the weight of taking a life, something he might not be prepared for. However, Mosuk fully understands what it means to kill someone, so he's certain this is what he wants. Now that they've come to an understanding, the two spend the following nights combing through town, questioning locals about any unusual sightings. Yet despite their efforts, after several nights of searching, they've turned up no solid leads. They're right back where they started. They chose to call it a night and return to Mosuk's place for a drink. As they relax with their drinks, their conversation turns serious, and Mosuk questions Jinya about his decision to hunt demons despite being one himself. Jinya explains that he has two primary reasons for pursuing demons. For one, it pays him well. Plenty of people despise demons, so he takes a reasonable fee in return for hunting them down. He questions Mosuk, wondering if profiting from killing demons bothers him. But Mosuk isn't particularly concerned about other demons' fates, and anyway, he has no room to judge how Jinya makes his money, especially while happily drinking the alcohol Jinya bought with it. Mosuk remembers Jinya bringing up a second reason earlier, so he presses him on it. There's got to be more to being a demon slayer than just cash. Jinya admits that, beyond the money, he's hunting demons to gather strength for an upcoming fight. He's devoted his life to stopping one specific demon, and he'll need every bit of power he can get to make that happen. Mosuk picks up on something odd. The way Jinya says stop instead of kill when talking wondering about this demon, and figures there's definitely more to the story. Since witnessing a demon murder the woman he loved, slaying demons has come naturally to Jinya, though when he considers facing Suzyun, he remains uncertain about whether he truly wants to kill her. Regardless, he knows he must become stronger to confront her in the future. But beyond that, he's unsure of his next steps. Jinya then asks Mosuke what he intends to do after avenging his wife's death, but Mosuke admits he hasn't thought of any specific plans. One of the reasons he chose to hide as a human is his deep aversion to violence. He has no desire to be chased by humans or forced into battles with other demons. All he's ever wanted was a peaceful existence in this village. More than anything, he longs to live that quiet life with his wife beside him. But until he avenges her, he can't. Once justice is served, he intends to return to his simple life, honoring her memory in the life he builds afterward. The following day, Jinya returns to the soba shop and orders his regular dish. As he sits down, Afu asks if he's had any success tracking down the slasher, but so far, he hasn't had much progress, which is disappointing, since someone lovely as Afu shouldn't have to live in fear of a slasher lurking around. Jinya's compliment about her beauty leaves Afu flustered, and her father, seizing the moment, eagerly steps in to help his daughter out. Her father straight up asks Jinya if he's interested in Afu, making her so mortified that she begs him to quit it. He defends himself, saying he's only trying to help because she's never been in a serious relationship before. While she can't deny that's true, Afu insists she's fully capable of finding someone on her own when the time comes. Until then, she's content just staying with her father. Flustered, she apologizes to Jinya for her dad's insolence, but Jinya reassures her it's fine. He can see her father's just a decent man looking out for his daughter's happiness. Afu agrees and says she loves her father a lot, but from the look on Jinya's face, she gets the feeling that he doesn't have the best relationship with his own father. Jinya silently stares at her for a few seconds, so Afu apologizes if her question made him uncomfortable, but Jinya says it's fine and starts telling the story of his childhood. He explains that he has a little sister, and when they were younger his father never treated her well. He would constantly beat her and say she didn't belong in the family. So one day Jinya took Suzyun and ran away. Afu asks Jinya if he hates his father for what happened, but he doesn't. In fact, he can understand why his father reacted the way that he did with everything that has happened since then, but he can't change the past. That evening, Jinya and Mosuke resume their routine patrols, but once again, they uncover no sign of the slasher. It seems the slasher may have gone into hiding since their search began, though the upside is that no new victims have appeared recently. Still, with nothing turning up tonight, Mosuke proposes they call it a night. But at that moment, he spots someone on the opposite side of the bridge. It's Afu, and whatever her reason for being out, it's risky for her to be alone at this hour, especially with a slasher on the loose. So Jinya approaches to speak with her. Afu is startled to see Jinya here and asks if he's by himself. Jinya explains he's with a friend, but when he looks back, Mosuke has vanished. Having turned invisible to give Jinya and Afu privacy, Mosuke reminds him to ensure Afu gets home safely, as it's dangerous for her to be out alone. Jinya questions Afu about why she's outside so late at night, and she responds that she was simply enjoying the sight of the snow willow flowers. She mentions that the flower earned its name because it resembles snow clinging to the branches, though it's actually a type of cherry blossom. Jinya remarks that the flower seems pitiful to him, pretending to be a willow when it's truly a cherry blossom, but Afu disagrees. She argues that no matter whether you see it as a willow or a cherry blossom, the flower still blossoms every spring, and its beauty stays just as breathtaking. Jinya understands the meaning behind her words and can't help but find it funny. Perhaps the flower has more say in its own fate than he does in his. They share a laugh, but since it's getting quite late, Jinya suggests escorting her home. Afu gladly agrees, and the two set off together. As they walk home, Afu suggests to Jinya that he should try to unwind more frequently since he always looks so tense. Jinya admits she might have a point, given that he's spent his whole life chasing one specific objective, rarely allowing himself a moment to relax. Afu doesn't know what this major goal of his actually is, and she doesn't plan on digging into his private matters either, but she thinks devoting your entire existence to a single mission sounds incredibly exhausting. Jinya agrees that it definitely is. months, but explains that he has nothing else to live for, so he chooses to keep going just the way he is. As they continue walking, Afu spots a few flowers growing beside a wall and pauses to get a closer look. She turns to Jinya and asks if he knows what kind they are. He admits he has not clue at all. Afu then tells him that they're called winter daphnes and explains that these flowers are known for surviving through the cold season and finally blooming when spring arrives. Afu spots another cluster of flowers nearby, and this time, Jinya recognizes them. They're chickweeds. He knows this because, in the village where he grew up, they were a common remedy for stomachaches. A friend from his childhood would often need them because she couldn't resist eating sweets until her stomach ached, and Jinya would always ensure she received the remedy. Afu can't help but smile at the story, and the fact that Jinya recalls such a warm memory shows that his life isn't just about that one all-consuming goal. Eventually, the two reach Afu's house, and she thanks him for walking her home before turning to head inside, just as she's about to leave, though Jinya asks if she'd be willing to teach him more about flowers another time. Following that, Jinya resumes his duty of standing guard in case the slasher appears, positioning himself by the bridge tonight. At one moment, a drunken man stumbles by, trailed by a girl. As she passes Jinya, she's captivated by his looks, but her admiration is short-lived, as moments later, the drunk man ahead is brutally ripped apart. Jinya swiftly leaps into action, grabbing his sword to confront the demon, but with the girl present, he's unable to tap into his demon powers. He fights fiercely to slay the demon, yet its tough skin resists his slashes, leaving him only able to shield the girl by keeping the slasher at bay. Sadly, the slasher slips past him and lunges toward the girl. However, just as the slasher swings to decapitate the girl, Mosuke suddenly pulls her out of harm's way. This brief distraction gives Jinya another chance to strike, but even now, his blade still can't pierce the demon's skin. Ultimately, before he can finish the fight, the creature seizes an opening, leaping into the sky to flee before Jinya can bring it down. Jinya expresses regret to Mosuke for allowing the demon to escape, but Mosuke reassures him that it's not his fault, as he couldn't have anticipated the demon's resilience. Regardless, Mosuke plans to track the demon in hopes of locating its lair, and in the meantime, he instructs Jinya to look after the girl they rescued. As Mosuke departs, Jinya faces the girl, and they lock eyes for a moment until she tells him to help her up already. She then asks if he recognizes her, but Jinya doesn't remember her, much to her frustration. She reveals she's Natsu, the girl whose life he saved from a demon 3 years ago. Now that Jinya looks closely, she does seem familiar, though she's grown far taller and more mature than the child he once knew. She points out that it's only natural for people to change with time, yet, strangely, Jinya hasn't aged a day since she last saw him. When he questions why she's wandering around so late, Natsu explains that she's assisting her father with late-night deliveries for an important client. Right then, Zenji comes rushing over to see if Natsu's okay after hearing some noise, and he's pretty surprised to find Jinya in a place like this. He teases them by asking if Natsu and Jinya are having some kind of late-night date, but Jinya calmly tells him that Natsu was almost killed by the slasher, so he stepped in to save her, though the drunk guy, unfortunately, didn't make it. Upon spotting the corpse on the ground, Zenji freaks out and insists they must contact the village police right away, but Natsu doubts that would help, as the police would never stand the chance against a demon. Zenji is shocked to learn a demon caused this, having believed the one that attacked Natsu was long gone. Jinya clarifies that this is a different demon, one he's been pursuing for days, and its attack on Natsu was merely a coincidence. Zenji would much rather avoid any further dealings with demons, but fate has other plans. He's already tangled up in this mess. Before leaving, Jinya tells them that if they ever faces demon trouble again, they can seek him out at a soba shop in Fukugawa. But for now, his hunt for the slasher can't wait. So with that, he turns and begins to walk away. Before Jinya departs, Zenji has information to share. If Jinya intends to hunt for the demon, he might find leads in Teramachi. There's an old temple there, deserted since its priest passed away long ago. Lately, locals have reported hearing numerous female voices coming from it nightly, fueling rumors that a demon might be lurking there. Meanwhile, Mosuke has been attempting to track the demon, but he eventually loses the trail and is left unsure of where to begin the search. At that moment, he hears a woman scream, and glancing up, he sees the demon clutching the woman in its mouth. The scene flashes him back to the day he discovered his wife's lifeless body by the river, and he swears he won't stop until he gets revenge on the creature that took her from him. He follows the demon's trail and eventually finds himself standing at the entrance of an old temple. Not knowing what might be waiting inside, he turns himself invisible and cautiously steps through the gate. Once inside, he sees the demon devouring the woman it had taken earlier, so he rushes forward and tries to stab it with his sword. But since stealth is his entire strength, charging in recklessly turns out to be a foolish mistake. The demon hears him approaching and slices Mosuke across the stomach. The demon then turns away, returning to its meal as Mosuke lies bleeding on the floor. He can't believe he allowed this to happen. Now he's going to die without ever getting his revenge. Powerless, he watches as the demon devours the woman's remains, and once it's finished, it merely steps over Mosuke, not even bothering to finish him off. Not long after, Jinya reaches the temple and is horrified to discover Mosuke wounded on the ground. He dashes over to him, and Mosuke, filled with regret, apologizes for failing so miserably. He explains to Jinya that he encountered the slasher here as it was feasting on a woman, but he couldn't defeat it, and now it's clear he won't live to fight another day. With his last fading strength, he begs with Jinya to take his sword and slay that demon in his place before he finally succumbs. This blade was forged in a place called Kadono, and it is meant to be really effective against demons, so it should be helpful in cutting through that thing's skin. Jinya agrees to avenge him and his wife, but in exchange, he says he would like permission to use Mosuke's power for the battle. Mosuke eventually dies, so Jinya uses his demon arm to begin absorbing his ability. As he does, he catches a glimpse of the life Mosuke once lived, how he escaped from the other superior demons, how he eventually found his way to this village, and how he first crossed paths with the woman who would become his wife. Their meeting was purely by chance, with Mosuke accidentally bumping into her as he was leaving his home. But as time went on, their bond deepened, and Mosuke didn't want their relationship to be based on deception, so one day, he chose to tell her the truth about who he really was. He expected Hatsu to run away from him in fear once she realized he told her he was a demon, but she just stared at him with a puzzled look on her face and asked why she should care, because whether he's a demon or a human, nothing could ever stop her from loving him. As the flashback ends, Mosuke's body vaporizes into a white mist, and Jinya vows to carry out his final request. A few hours pass, and the slasher comes back to the temple, dragging another woman with it. As it begins feeding on her, its mind drifts back to how everything led to this point. The creature has no memory of its origin. It simply awoke in this monstrous form with one undeniable purpose: to slaughter as many men as it could, and so, without question, that's exactly what it has done. The demon carried out its mission without thought, yet deep down, it felt as though it was destined to find someone important in order to finally return home. Still, it was painfully aware of how hideous it looked, which led it to crave beauty, and the first idea that came to its twisted mind was to devour as many beautiful women as possible, believing that by doing so, it too would become beautiful. As the demon continues devouring its fresh prey, a voice suddenly cuts through the air, and before it can react, one of its arms is slashed. Jinya is employing Mosuke's ability to conceal his presence, remains completely invisible to the creature. Frustrated, the demon lashes out blindly, tracking only the echo of Jinya's movements, but his speed is far beyond what the beast can match. With that in mind, Jinya realizes he can't get close enough to deliver a killing blow without getting struck by one of the demon's devastating slashes, so he deactivates his invisibility and chooses to confront it directly using his demon arm. Thanks to the enhanced strength it provides, Jinya manages to slice off the demon's head in a single clean strike. The head hits the ground as the creature's body thrashes in pain. With its final breaths, Jinya poses a question. It's evident that the demon killed men instantly and abducted women to consume here, yet if that's true, this demon couldn't have been the one that killed Hatsu, as her body wasn't eaten. He demands the demon's name, and it begins to mutter that it needs a body to return home. Jinya has no idea what the demon is talking about. Jinya lifts its head and declares he will now claim its power. The ability, known as Dart, provides a fleeting surge of speed, perfect for combat. But as Jinya absorbs its essence, fragmented visions flood his mind, and in the process, he comes to the realization that this demon was actually Mokyuke's wife, Hatsu. A group of men attacked her, then threw her into the river to die. As she was drowning, the only thought in her mind was how desperately she wanted to to see Mosuke one more time. It was these overwhelming emotions, along with her deep resentment toward the men who killed her, that transformed Hatsu into a demon, yet, tragically, her wish would never be fulfilled. The following day, Jinya steps out of his room to handle some personal matters, but not before placing an offering in memory of Mosuke and Hatsu. At the same time, back in the soba shop, Afu's father is starting to worry that he may have scared Jinya away, especially since the young man hasn't returned after hearing the suggestion that he could marry Afu if he wished. To begin, Afu points out to him that she never consented to wed Jinya, and regarding his recent absence from their shop, she encountered him not long ago, and he mentioned he'd return once his affairs were settled. Her father finds this strange. After all, the slasher killings have ended, which should mean Jinya already defeated the demon behind them. However, when Afu spoke with him, Jinya revealed there were still additional demons he needed to defeat. That same night, the two men responsible for Hatsu's death begin plotting their next victim. Now that the other slasher has been eliminated, they laugh about how the last woman they executed kept shouting for some man named Mosuke until the very moment she perished. But before they can take even a single step further, Jinya emerges from the darkness and swiftly strikes them down. After confirming they're dead, Jinya departs, having at last honored Mosuke's desire to see Hatsu avenged. One evening, a man is on his way into the soba shop when he catches sight of someone passing by. Something about this stranger reminds him of his brother, prompting him to stare for a few moments. While he's momentarily distracted, Natsu accidentally collides with him. The instant she spots the swords at his side, she realizes that this man is a samurai. In this era, offending a samurai could easily lead to a beheading, so without hesitation, she begins apologizing for the incident. The samurai reassures her that there's no need to apologize. He was the one at fault for not watching where he was going. Natsu is taken aback because samurai aren't usually this reasonable. Just then, Afu's father steps out of his shop and tells Natsu not to worry, explaining that Naotsugu is a samurai famous for his kindness, so he'd never stir up trouble without cause. The following morning, the man orders a bowl of soba and takes a seat. It's obvious that something is weighing on him, so Afu and her father approach and ask what's troubling him. They let Naotsugu know that if something's bothering him, he's welcome to share it with them. Grateful for their kindness, he admits that he's concerned about his older brother. Afu's father doesn't realize it, but he's completely mistaken. After all, everyone knows Naotsugu is the sole heir of the Miura family, meaning he couldn't possibly have an older brother. And that's exactly the issue. Naotsugu is absolutely convinced he has an older brother, yet every time he mentions him, people insist no such brother exists. Frustrated, he turns to Afu and says his brother's name is Sadanaga, but Afu has never heard that name before. Now Naotsugu feels disheartened. Things have been this way for quite some time. No one, not even his own parents, remembers his brother. He's beginning to fear that he may be losing his mind. Afu and her father can clearly see that Naotsugu is going through a tough time, so they mention that they know someone who specializes in handling supernatural cases like this. Naotsugu wonders if they're referring to some kind of diviner or shaman, but that's not the case. The man they're talking about is just a Ronin, but one who's willing to investigate strange happenings and skilled enough to slay demons, making him incredibly dependable. And as if on cue, Jinya walks into the shop just moments later. Jinya requests a bowl of soba, and without delay, the shop owner begins preparing it. Once his food is served, Afu's father asks if he's beginning to enjoy the meals here. Jinya responds that the soba remains rather plain and ordinary, though he does concede there's something comforting about its simple flavor, which is why he likes it a lot. Once Jinya finishes his meal, Afu approaches to serve him tea. Having been taking flower lessons from her recently, Jinya recognizes the specific blossom she used to brew this tea, and he finds it particularly pleasing. He also praises her improved serving technique, noting how much more polished her movements have become. But before the conversation can go any further, Naotsugu cuts in. He apologizes for interrupting Jinya, but explains that he heard Jinya is someone who looks into strange occurrences. That's why he was hoping Jinya might be able to help him with his current issue. Sadly, Jinya replies that he isn't much help in that area. His only real skill is slaying demons, so unless Naotsugu's problem has something to do with a demon, there's not much Jinya can offer. While at a matcha shop, Natsu unexpectedly encounters Jinya, who's surprised to find him there. Unaware of his liking for matcha, she takes a seat next to him, and suddenly, Jinya asks if Natsu and Zenji have plans to marry soon. Caught off guard by the question, Natsu almost chokes on her mochi. After regaining her composure, she questions why Jinya would even mention such a thing. He clarifies that he was merely curious. She is 16, is of marriageable age for this era. He assumed Juzu would want her to wed someone dependable like Zenji. Natsu understands what he is trying to say, but marrying Zenji is completely out of the question for her. It's not that she dislikes him. Rather, he's much older and has always felt more like a brother to her than a potential romantic partner. As the conversation continues, Natsu questions why Jinya hasn't settled down with a wife yet. Jinya points out there aren't many women willing to marry a wandering demon slayer without a stable job. Natsu can't exactly disagree, but she insists he should start thinking about his future. After all, his youth won't last forever, and he'll need to consider building a proper life someday. On that note, Natsu asks about Jinya's age, but she is amazed when he reveals he's 31. This reminds her of his earlier claim about being immune to aging, which she'd originally dismissed as a joke. Now, she's not so sure. She presses him to share his secret. Jinya avoids revealing his half-demon, and instead offers an evasive response. Jinya then places money on the table to pay for the mochi and stands to leave. As he has demons to hunt, Natsu questions why he opts to hunt demons when his sword skills could easily secure him a better job. Jinya truly isn't sure how to respond to that question, but the most honest answer he can offer is that this is the only path he sees to achieve his goals. Natsu feels somewhat relieved hearing that given how emotionless Jinya usually seems, she had been concerned that nothing in life really mattered to him. But now, she understands he's just a regular guy with his own ambitions and concerns. In any case, she needs to return to her shop. So she says her goodbyes to Jinya and tells him not to overthink things. Later that night, Naotsugu prepares to leave once more to keep searching for his brother. Just as he's about to step out, his mother stops him. She's growing increasingly concerned about his behavior. She's reminded him again and again that he doesn't have a brother, but Naotsugu remembers Sadanaga as vividly as ever, so he's certain he's real, and he won't give up until he tracks him down. Naotsugu's mother believes he's going too far, as she's learned he's been venturing into the slums of the red light districts to find a brother who isn't real, and it's beginning to destroy the family's reputation. She points out that, as the Miura family's heir, he must maintain his dignity and prioritize his obligations. However, ever since he began this quest for his brother, he has been forgetting all his responsibilities. Naotsugu tells her he will focus on his duties once he has found his brother and runs outside so his mother can't complain anymore. As he runs down the street, he recalls a memory of his brother, and he really wishes he could find him. But there are practically no traces of him left. At that moment, Jinya steps out behind Naotsugu and asks if he's still looking for his brother. Naotsugu recalls him from the soba shop, and Jinya reveals he's chosen to look into Naotsugu's issue after all. Still, he warns that he cannot promise he'll locate Sadanaga. Now Naotsugu understands, and honestly, he's just happy that someone is willing to help him. First things first, Jinya needs to know what Sadanaga was doing before he disappeared, so Naotsugu is about to invite him into his house so they can talk about it. But then he remembers that his mother is there, and she won't approve of him hiring Jinya to help look for Sadanaga, so they need to go somewhere else. Meanwhile, they find themselves meeting at the soba shop after closing time. But before they pick up their conversation about Naotsugu's brother, there's something he's been wanting to ask. He couldn't help but notice that Jinya's sword is of exceptional quality, so he inquires whether Jinya comes from a samurai family. However, that's not the case. Jinya explains that he once lived in a mountain village that was well known for its blacksmiths, and he had a role there that required him to wield a sword in order to slay demons, so that's what he does. As for the fancy sword, it was originally a sacred blade enshrined in the village, but after a tragic incident, Jinya was given permission to use it on his journey. Naotsugu spots the intricate details on the scabbard, identifying them as the signature work of the Kodono village blacksmiths. Jinya is surprised that he could deduce so much just from a glance. As it turns out, Naotsugu has something of an obsession with blades, having spent countless hours studying various swords over the years. Curious, he asks Jinya if his sword carries a name, to which Jinya replies, it's called Yarai. But when he asks if he can try it out, Jinya coldly tells him no because that's going too far. Naotsugu realizes his mistake and apologizes for overstepping his bounds, so the two get back on topic. dramatic. As he mentioned earlier, Naotsugu's brother has disappeared. No matter how hard Naotsugu looks for him, he can't uncover a single clue. What's even stranger is that it's as if Sadanaga never existed. No one seems to remember him at all. Every now and then, Naotsugu comes across people who have faint recollections of Sadanaga, but the moment he presses for details, their memories vanish as though the conversation never happened. This seems like a serious conversation, so the shop owner speaks up and asks if it's really okay for them to be talking about this stuff here. Jinya tells him it's fine since barely anyone ever comes to this shop, and from what Jinya knows, Afu and her father are really concerned about Naotsugu, so it shouldn't be a problem for them to listen in on the conversation. Jinya questions Naotsugu about whether he remembers exactly when his brother vanished. Naotsugu explains that it was toward the end of January. As he reflects on it now, he suddenly recalls his brother mentioning he was going to meet a woman just before disappearing, and later, when Naotsugu searched Sadanaga's room, he discovered flowers left behind. Naotsugu admits he doesn't know much about flowers, so he couldn't identify what type they were, only that they had white petals and a powerful, lingering fragrance. When Jinya asks when he first noticed the flowers, Naotsugu explains that he found them in Sadanaga's room, which struck him as strange because his brother was never one to care for the scent of flowers in the first place. Jinya asks whether Naotsugu still has those flowers in his possession, and fortunately, Naotsugu had the foresight to preserve them before they withered, keeping them as potential evidence. That's certainly helpful, but now that Jinya knows about the mysterious flowers, now he is quite worried. Even if Naotsugu's mother might object, Jinya decides he has no choice but to visit the house himself and conduct a proper investigation. The following morning, Jinya returns to the soba shop and is greeted by Natsu-ai. Afu's father observes how naturally Jinya and Natsu interact. He warns Afu that she'd better step up her efforts unless she wants someone else to win Jinya's attention. However, Afu is completely oblivious to what her father even means. At that moment, Jinya turns to Afu and asks how well she knows Naotsugu. She responds that while they aren't especially close, they do chat frequently whenever he stops by the shop. If she had to characterize him, she'd describe Naotsugu as a genuinely kind man, though Afu's father chimes in, adding that he tends to get a bit overly enthusiastic whenever swords become the subject of conversation. Speaking of blades, Afu's father has an item he wishes to present to Jinya. He reveals his samurai's kagai and requests that Jinya accept it. Afu questions her father about how he obtained such an item, as only samurai typically possess them, and he clarifies that Naotsugu gave it to him as a gift, but he now wants to pass it on to Jinya. Jinya attempts to decline, explaining that the item wasn't originally intended for him, but Afu's father won't hear it. He insists that a simple soba shop owner like himself has no real use for samurai equipment anyway, seeing how genuinely eager Afu's dad is for him to take it. Jinya finally accepts the gift with gratitude, yet there's still a pressing matter weighing on his mind. Turning to Afu, Jinya asks whether flowers with white petals and a yellow center could be daffodils, and she confirms that they very well might be. His expression darkens at her answer, because if daffodils were truly found in Sadanaga's room, then this situation just became far more dangerous than he'd imagined. Watch this next video on screen and subscribe to not miss next part.